because that's the first place that we're going to go, because South Carolina seceded from the Union and actually fired on and attacked Fort Sumter. So what we're going to have our students do is we're going to take them all the way down to this particular pen, and we're going to explore some layers here. So the first one that we have is a YouTube layer. And where is it? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to watch this video that talks about Fort Sumter. It's a PBS video that details the history leading up to it, as well as the actual events. And it's actually pretty interesting because it explains how the election of Abraham Lincoln sparked the secession of South Carolina as well as 6 other states from the Union, and that sparked the Civil War. And I think it gives kids perspective to be able to visually see what events led up to it and a reenactment of it on video, because video is very important to be able to see those. Another layer that we have are the picture layers, and we have different pictures all around that just show the panoramic views of the different spots around. For instance, we have, this shows the fort itself and what it looks like and what it may have looked like, the original cannons, for instance, and you can see on the walls the scarring from the fighting and from the cannonballs. I think that gives kids perspective to be able to understand how horrific it was. So that's our first pin of Fort Sumter.
Next up, we're going to take a trip to the first Battle of Bull Run. We're going to go to the Battle of Bull Run National Memorial Park. And at this park, I have included a map of where the troops came in from both sides for the first Battle of Bull Run. At this particular spot, we're going to use the Images tool, and we're going to use the YouTube tool to talk about, for the students to discuss or write about the different characteristics of the land in the area. Because both of these videos and all of the pictures give great representation of the terrain. We're going to talk about how easy it was or difficult for the troops to come in through the forest and then into that open field and start the battle. We also want to talk about the difference between this terrain and that at Fort Sumter, because that was in the Confederate States, the Southern States, and this is in the Northern States, and there's a big terrain difference, and that satisfies one of our two objectives.
Okay, the next place that we are going to go is actually the White House, and it's going there now. We are going to be examining the original document that fueled the Civil War, which is called the Emancipation Proclamation. And what happened was Lincoln issued this saying that it was signed on January 1st, 1863, and it said that any slaves were free, and that infuriated the southern states and galvanized them against the northern states, which just further divided the country. So we have this particular picture of an actual document, and using original documents and artifacts helps make the activity more real for the students, and they feel more connected to it by seeing the actual documents. And in this way, Google Earth is a fantastic tool to engage the students in something that they would never be able to see without technology. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is Street View. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on our little man, and we're going to take him down to to the White House, and we're actually going to go on inside the White House. And the part about this that's fabulous is you've got you're now actually in the White House, and you can scroll around and move around as if you were inside. And I think this is called the Blue Room. And now we're into another room, obviously a dining room, and a picture of Abraham Lincoln, which just lends flavor to the story, because the White House was actually where Lincoln signed it. It wasn't Congress, it was Lincoln himself as president. And so this decor is probably not exactly the same, but the architecture sure is. So this gives the kids a very real connection to the events that happened.
This form page is the same size as if you were doing that.
Okay, next up we're going to go on a trip to Gettysburg.
It's only bigger is if you do on a page like this. She
Um,
just says that it needs to be readable. Could you
if it will go. There we go. And in
Yeah, I just
Gettysburg, we're going to go to the Soldiers National Cemetery.
and then
This is where Abraham Lincoln gave his famous speech, the Gettysburg Address. I have a video recording of someone reciting the address and the actual document. What I would like the students to do at this time is use the pictures that I have saved under the tabs to look at those as the speech is being read, and think about the emotions that must have been flowing through the people's heads as they were there. I'd like them to write, at this point, a small journal entry based on the point of view of someone who might have been there at that point, listening to that speech and seeing the cannons and the tombstones and just everything around it, and really getting a feel for what that must have been like in the midst of the Civil War, where people all around them were dying and fighting, and maybe some of these people lost family members, and this was just a really intense, emotional time for the citizens of the United States.
because so many of our readings are online.
Okay. And finally, the last place that we're going to go is Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. And there was something very significant that happened here, and we want our students to be able to understand that after 5 years of fighting, there was finally a surrender. And General Lee, on April 9th, 1864, General Lee surrendered to the Union troops, led by General Grant. And this is really important. We have a map overlay of what it looked like at the time, and that's what's important at this pin, because we have several things going on. First, we want them to see how it appeared back in the day, overlay with how it looks now modern, so they can form a deeper connection to the events. We also have an eyewitness account of what happened, and we want them at this point to read the eyewitness account, because this will give them some perspective from the standpoint of both sides. Because at this point, what we want the kids to do is to be able to write down in their journals, how do you think both sides felt? And how do you think the North felt? They won. How do you think they felt? How did the South feel? They lost. But really, was there a winner in this war? With over 600,000 casualties of the war, just in soldiers, was there really a win for the country? So we want them to struggle with, was this okay in the long run? And hopefully they'll come to the realization that slavery needed to end, and hopefully that was the right thing for this country.